In 291, indebted souls signed contracts with Salvage Solutions Unlimited to loot abandoned worlds. But they soon realize the corporation uses them as test subjects for a terrifying containment experiment. The real horror isn't the ruins, it is what returns home with them. Before we get into the story, do me a quick favor. Like this video, subscribe, and comment what story you want to see next. Now, let's begin. Darkness had a texture, like wet wool pressed against the eyes. Rowan couldn't breathe. The air in the corridor was thin, recycled through filters that had stopped working hours ago, leaving a metallic tang that coated his tongue. He lay on his side, cheek pressed against cold plating that vibrated with the distant rhythmic thrum of the station's failing heart. Above him, the ceiling panel hung by a single jagged screw, swaying gently in a draft that didn't exist outside the sealed sector. Beyond that gap, something scuttled. It wasn't the sound of boots or tools. It was the dry, chitinous click of legs finding purchase on smooth metal, moving with a speed that defied the low gravity. Rowan held his breath until his lungs burned. He knew the rules. Don't make a sound. But his own heartbeat hammered against his ribs like a trapped bird, each beat a thunderous gong in the silence. The thing above him paused. It was listening. It was always listening. A shape detached itself from the shadows of the junction ahead. It wasn't solid, not entirely. It looked like heat haze given weight, rippling and distorting the light from the emergency strobes. As it turned toward him, the air around it warped, pulling at his vision. He felt a pressure in his skull, a sudden spike of nausea that wasn't physical but existential. The entity was aware of him. It knew he was alive. Rowan's hand drifted to the plasma cutter at his hip. His fingers were numb. If he fired it, the discharge would be bright enough to blind him and loud enough to kill him. But if he stayed still, the thing would find him eventually. The silence was feeding it. Every second of quiet made it more solid, more real. A drop of sweat fell from his nose. It hit the floor with a sharp tap. The scuttling above stopped. Rowan squeezed his eyes shut. 3 days earlier. The air in the briefing room smelled of stale coffee and ozone. Rowan sat at the edge of his chair, hands resting on his knees to keep them from shaking. The chair was uncomfortable, molded plastic that dug into his spine, but he couldn't relax. Relaxing meant thinking about the number at the bottom of his contract. The holographic display in the center of the room flickered, projecting a rotating model of a planet covered in gray clouds. No oceans, no green, just rock and atmosphere thick with particulate matter. World designation, K94. Former agricultural hub, a voice announced. It came from everywhere and nowhere. The company didn't allow faces on the briefing feeds. Abandoned 8 years ago. Cause of abandonment listed as structural integrity failure. Salvage Solutions Unlimited has acquired full rights to all assets. Rowan stared at the rotating sphere. He didn't see agriculture. He saw debt. 700,000 credits, accrued over 2 years of bad luck, and his sister's escalating medical bills. The number glowed in his mind, brighter than the hologram. The colony was evacuated, the voice continued. Or so we thought. Preliminary drone scans indicate intact power grids. Living quarters are sealed. We need a crew to breach the lower levels and retrieve the primary fusion core. Quota: 1 high-yield energy cell. A list of names scrolled across the bottom of the projection. Rowan scanned them, looking for familiar faces. He found none. Everyone here was new, or desperate. Your team, the voice said, consists of 4 specialists. You are the pilot and engineer. You will handle navigation, ship maintenance, and heavy lifting during extraction. Rowan nodded once, then realized no one could see him. He cleared his throat.
Understood.
Next is Vera. The voice listed. Former military scout, scanner operations and perimeter security. She brings extensive experience in hostile environments. A woman sat 2 rows ahead, her posture rigid. Rowan had seen her during the intake screening. She was tall, with hair shaved close to the scalp on one side and long on the other dyed a faded blue. Her eyes were pale gray, darting constantly around the room, checking exits, checking corners, checking shadows. She wore a tactical vest over a plain gray shirt, even though they hadn't been issued gear yet. Milo, the voice added. Mechanic, jokester. The one who keeps morale from collapsing when the comms cut out.
A man in the back row raised a hand.
He was small, with a round face and hair that refused to stay flat despite hours of styling gel. He grinned, showing teeth that looked too big for his face. Hey, he mouthed, waving enthusiastically. Rowan waved back weakly. Milo's energy felt manic, like he was trying to talk himself into believing this wasn't insane. And finally, Hana. The voice paused. A new face appeared in the corner of the projection. A young woman, maybe 24, wearing a crisp white corporate intern uniform that looked painfully out of place among the grime and desperation of the others. She held a datapad with both hands, her knuckles white. Corporate liaison, the voice said. She will monitor compliance and ensure our protocols are followed. Do not ignore her instructions.
Rowan frowned slightly.
A corporate intern? On a level 4 salvage run? That wasn't standard. Usually the company sent lawyers via drone only after extraction. Why is she here? Rowan asked. The question hung in the air for a second before being cut off. Her presence is mandatory, the voice replied smoothly. Questioning authority is not part of your job description. Your contract outlines all duties. Any deviation results in immediate penalty to your debt ledger. The hologram changed, displaying a dense block of legal text. Rowan's stomach tightened. He'd read it during signing, but he hadn't understood half of it then, and the small font didn't help now. Clause 14, Section C, liability for contamination or breach of quarantine protocols rests solely with the crew. Clause 22, Paragraph A, failure to meet quota results in doubling of outstanding debt plus interest compounded daily. Is there anything else?
Milo asked, his voice cracking slightly. He laughed nervously at his own joke, glancing around as if expecting applause.
No, the voice said. Boarding shuttle departs in 10 minutes. Report to Bay 4. Welcome to Salvage Solutions Unlimited.
The hologram dissolved.
The room went dark, lit only by the emergency strips along the floor. Rowan stood up, his legs feeling like lead. He walked toward the exit, joining the slow stream of people filing out. Vera moved ahead of him, her steps long and silent. She didn't look back. Milo jogged to catch up with Hana, who was staring at her datapad as if it contained the secrets of the universe. Hey, Milo said, his voice loud in the emptying room. So, I heard this place is haunted. You believe in ghosts? Hana didn't look up. Ghosts are a biological misinterpretation of electromagnetic fields. There are no spirits. Milo blinked. Right. Well, funny thing about electricity, right? It can really get under your skin. Hana finally looked at him. Her eyes were wide, dark circles beneath them, suggesting she hadn't slept in days. But her expression was blank, unreadable. Please refrain from making jokes, Milo. Stress increases cortisol levels, which impairs decision-making. I suggest you focus on your equipment check. Milo swallowed hard and took a step back. He rubbed the back of his neck, his grin faltering. Okay, sure. No jokes. Got it. Rowan fell into step beside Hana as they exited the briefing room. The hallway was long, lined with windows looking out over the docking bay. Hundreds of ships sat idle, their hulls painted with the logo of Salvage Solutions Unlimited, a stylized gear swallowing a star. You're from corporate? Rowan asked. Hana's grip on her datapad tightened. I'm an intern. Same thing, Rowan muttered. You know the rules better than anyone. I know the protocols, Hana corrected, her voice flat. Protocols are designed to keep us safe and profitable. Safe? Rowan gestured toward the bay. We're going to a dead world. There's nothing safe about that. Hana turned to face him. Up close, he could see the fine lines of fatigue around her mouth. The danger is not on the planet, Mr. Hale. The danger is in bringing anything back. Rowan frowned. What does that mean? Hannah didn't answer. She simply adjusted her grip on the datapad and walked faster, disappearing into the crowd toward the boarding shuttle. Rowan stood alone for a moment, watching her go. The comment lingered in his mind, odd and out of place. He shook it off. It was just corporate paranoia. They wanted him to follow every rule, every procedure, to keep the company from getting sued if someone got eaten. He joined Milo at the shuttle entrance. Vera was already inside, checking the seals on her scanner pack. She looked up as Rowan entered, her eyes narrowing slightly before returning to neutral.
Sit down.
Her voice dry.
We lift in 5.
Rowan sat next to her, pulling a small toolkit from his bag. He opened it, arranging his wrenches and pliers with mechanical precision. It helped to focus on the tasks he knew. Fixing things made sense. People did not. The shuttle doors hissed shut, sealing them inside. The hum of engines starting up vibrated through the floor plates. Rowan looked out the small porthole window. K-94 loomed in the distance, a gray sphere against the black void. It looked peaceful from afar, quiet, empty. He checked his contract on his wristcom. The debt number still glowed red, unchanged. Meet quota, he thought. Get paid. Save Lena. The shuttle lurched forward, pushing them back into their seats. Rowan closed his eyes, letting the vibration lull him into an uneasy sleep. He didn't want to think about what was inside that planet. He only wanted to get out again. But as the shuttle jumped into superluminal drive, and the stars stretched into long white lines, Rowan felt a strange sensation in the back of his neck, the feeling of being watched. He opened his eyes and looked at the reflection in the window. Behind him, Vera was asleep, her head tilted to the side. Milo was humming a tuneless song, tapping his fingers on his knee. Hannah was staring at her datapad, her face illuminated by the blue light, unmoving, unblinking. Rowan turned back to the window. The stars blurred past. For a second, just a fraction of a second, the reflection in the glass showed something else. A shadow standing behind his seat. Tall, thin. It had no face, only a smooth, dark surface where features should be. Rowan jerked his head around to look behind him. Nothing was there. Just the empty aisle of the shuttle. He let out a breath he didn't know he was holding. Stress, that's all it was. Lack of sleep and fear playing tricks on his mind. But as the shuttle stabilized in normal space, dropping them into the atmosphere of K-94, Rowan noticed Vera's hand had drifted to the plasma pistol at her hip. She wasn't sleeping anymore. Her eyes were open, fixed on the viewport, her jaw clenched tight. Milo stopped humming. The silence in the shuttle grew heavy, thick with unspoken dread. Hannah looked up from her pad. She met Rowan's gaze in the reflection of the window. Her expression was calm, almost pitying.
Enjoy the view. You're going to need all the time you can get.
The shuttle shuddered as it hit the turbulence of the upper atmosphere. Below them, the gray clouds parted, revealing a landscape of jagged rocks and twisted metal spires, rising from the earth like the ribs of a dead god. Rowan gripped his toolkit until his knuckles turned white. He had signed the contract. He had no way out. The ship descended into the dark. The landing gear slammed home with a bone-jarring thud, throwing Rowan forward against his harness. The shuttle groaned, metal shrieking against the tarmac of the abandoned runway before settling into stillness. Outside the viewport, the sky was a bruised purple, choked with heavy smog that swirled in slow, deliberate patterns around the twisted spires of K-94's capital city. Hannah unbuckled her seatbelt first. The snap of the buckle echoed sharply in the cramped cabin. She stood, smoothing the front of her pristine white uniform. Not a wrinkle marred the fabric. Not a speck of dust touched her boots.
Welcome to Sector 7G.
Stepping into the aisle, her voice was level, devoid of the tremor that had plucked at Milo's throat hours earlier.
Please remain seated until we verify atmospheric stability.
Milo slumped back in his seat, letting out a breath that fogged the cold window. He wiped sweat from his upper lip with the sleeve of his grease-stained shirt.
Atmospheric stability? Is that corporate speak for hope we don't melt our lung?
Vera was already moving. She unbuckled with sharp, efficient tugs, her body tense as a coiled spring. She didn't look at Milo. Her eyes were fixed on the hatch controls. She reached over and pressed the manual override button. The hydraulic hiss of the ramp lowering filled the air, louder than expected, vibrating in Rowan's teeth. Cold air rushed in. It smelled of ozone, rust, and something sweetly rotten, like fruit left too long in the sun. Rowan kicked his harness free and swung his legs out. His boots hit the metal grating of the shuttle floor with a clatter that sounded obscenely loud in the silence. He grabbed his toolkit, checking the straps to ensure nothing had shifted during the descent. The weight of it felt good. Solid. Real.
Stay close.
She didn't turn around as she stepped onto the ramp, her silhouette stark against the gloom outside.
And keep your comms open. If you lose visual contact with me, you don't scream. You don't run. You wait for my signal.
Milo scrambled to follow, tripping over his own feet in his haste. He caught himself on the bulkhead, righting himself with a grin that didn't reach his eyes.
Right.
Wait for the signal. Got it. No screaming. Though I have to ask, what's the protocol if we get eaten? Do we file an incident report with HR? Hannah stepped past him, her path straight and unyielding. She stopped at the top of the ramp, looking down into the gloom of the runway. Incident reports are for employees who survive the assignment, she said.
There is no HR on K-94.
Rowan fell into step behind her, his eyes scanning the horizon. The city stretched out before them, a graveyard of steel and concrete. Buildings leaned at precarious angles, their facades stripped bare by wind and time. Streetlights hung like broken necks from their poles. There was no movement. No birds, no insects, just the slow drift of purple fog across the cracked pavement. But there were sounds. A low, rhythmic hum that seemed to come from everywhere and nowhere. It vibrated in Rowan's chest, a constant reminder that the planet wasn't dead. Not entirely. They reached the bottom of the ramp. The air hit he like a physical weight, thick and humid. He pulled his scarf up over his nose, filtering the worst of the smell, but the taste of copper lingered on his tongue.
Scanners.
She raised her wrist-mounted device, the screen flaring to life with cascading streams of green data. Her fingers danced across the glass, adjusting frequencies.
Radiation is nominal. Air quality is acceptable for short-term exposure. But the power grid is active.
Milo let out a low whistle.
Active? You mean there's electricity? I mean the lights are on.
She lowered her scanner, frowning.
And nobody left behind anything to run them.
Rowan looked around. They stood in the center of a vast plaza. At its heart rose a monolithic structure, its surface covered in graffiti that had long since faded to ghostly remnants. Beyond it, skyscrapers pierced the smog like jagged teeth. In the distance, the hum grew louder, pulsing in time with his own heartbeat.
Where's the salvage team?
Milo asked, his voice dropping.
The one they said was already here.
Hannah checked her datapad again. The blue light illuminated her face, highlighting the dark circles under her eyes.
There is no prior team. This is our entry point. The reactor core is 3 kilometers north. We move out now to meet our daily quota.
Rowan blinked.
3 kilometers? On foot?
Vera slung her scanner pack over her shoulder. The strap creaked as she tightened it.
There are no vehicles on K-94. And we don't have enough fuel to waste on a shuttle flight within the city limits. Move out.
She started walking, her pace brisk and determined. Rowan hurried to catch up, his boots crunching on the debris-strewn ground. Glass shards and twisted metal crunched underfoot with every step. Milo fell in beside Hannah, his usual chatter replaced by a nervous silence. He kept glancing over his shoulder, as if expecting something to leap from the shadows of the surrounding ruins. As they walked deeper into the city, the scale of the abandonment became apparent. Cars sat abandoned in the middle of intersections, their doors hanging open like gaping mouths. Cafes lay frozen in time, tables set for meals that would never be eaten. Cups sat on saucers, the liquid inside long evaporated, leaving behind sticky brown rings. Rowan reached out and touched the armrest of a nearby bench. It was cold, solid, real. He pulled his hand back quickly, as if burned by the memory of what might have happened here.
Why are there no bodies?
Milo whispered. He stopped walking for a moment, staring at a playground adjacent to the plaza. The swings moved gently in the wind, creaking rhythmically.
I mean, usually when a colony dies, there's, I don't know, bones, bodies, something.
Hana didn't look up from her pad.
Contamination protocols require immediate incineration of biological matter upon detection of the anomaly.
If there are no bodies, it means the previous teams were efficient. Vera stopped abruptly. She turned to face them, her hand resting on the grip of her plasma pistol. Her eyes narrowed, scanning the rooftops above them.
Efficient doesn't explain the food. Look at the cafes. The coffee is still warm.
Rowan stepped closer. He knelt beside a table in the center of the plaza. On it sat a ceramic mug, steam rising from its surface in thin, delicate tendrils. He reached out, hovering his hand inches above the rim. Heat radiated from it.
That's impossible.
His voice was tight.
Power to this sector has been offline for decades. Thermal decay alone would have cooled that liquid hours ago.
Milo backed away, his face pale.
Maybe someone just left?
There are no footprints leading away.
She pointed her scanner toward the edge of the plaza. The device chirped, sending out a pulse of invisible waves that bounced off the surrounding buildings and returned as a three-dimensional map on her screen. The map showed empty rooms, empty hallways. But in the depths of the largest building, a massive corporate headquarters looming over the city, the scanner detected movement. Small, fast, multiple.
We're not alone.
Her voice was flat, clinical. She drew her pistol, the weapon humming to life with a high-pitched whine.
Stay behind me.
Rowan grabbed his toolkit, holding it like a club. His heart hammered against his ribs. He looked around wildly, searching for any sign of life. The silence pressed in on him, heavier than before. The hum from the distance seemed to have stopped, replaced by a new sound, a wet, slithering noise coming from the alleyway to their left. Hana stepped forward, her expression unreadable. She raised her datapad, holding it like a shield.
Do not engage.
Her voice was calm, almost bored.
Engagement triggers the echoes.
Echoes?
Milo squeaked. He pressed himself against Vera's back.
What are echoes? Are they bad? How do we know if they're bad?
Vera didn't answer her question. Her eyes were fixed on the alleyway, her finger tightening on the trigger. Rowan felt a chill crawl up his spine. The slithering sound grew louder, accompanied by the faint scent of ozone and rotting meat. From the darkness of the alley, a shape emerged. It was tall, impossibly thin, its limbs jointed in ways that defied anatomy. Its skin was translucent, revealing the pulsating organs within. But it had no face, only a smooth, dark surface where features should have been. It tilted its head, listening to Milo's ragged breathing. Rowan realized with dawning horror that the creature wasn't moving toward them. It was waiting for a sound. Any sound.
Don't breathe.
Though he knew it was futile. The air in his lungs felt too precious, too dangerous to release. Vera raised her pistol higher, her aim steady despite the tension coiling through her frame. She didn't fire. Not yet. She watched the creature with the intensity of a predator stalking its prey, but there was no aggression. In her stance, only a terrifying, calculated restraint. Milo clamped his mouth shut, his eyes wide with terror. He swayed slightly, his legs trembling as he fought to keep his balance. Hana tapped her datapad once. The screen flashed red.
Threat level, critical. Do not make a sound. Do not move. If it detects vibration, the containment field fails.
Rowan looked at Hana, then back at the creature. The thing's smooth head twitched again, orienting itself toward Milo's heartbeat, which he could hear pounding in his own ears. It was hungry. Not for flesh, for noise. The ground beneath them began to vibrate. Faintly at first, then more strongly. The coffee on the table rippled. Vera's eyes locked onto Rowan's. Her message was clear. Run if you can, but do not scream. Rowan nodded once. He gripped his toolkit until his knuckles turned white, his breath held tight in his chest as the creature took its first step into the light. The creature's foot clicked against the asphalt, a sound like dry bones striking stone. It did not walk so much as it unfolded, limbs extending with jerky, unnatural segments that seemed to multiply in the periphery of vision. The translucent skin rippled, revealing muscles that coiled and uncoiled without warning, pulling the body forward in lurches that defied momentum. Milo's knee knocked against Vera's backplate. The metallic clack was louder than a gunshot in the heavy silence. The creature froze, its head snapped toward the sound with hydraulic precision. The smooth, featureless face tilted upward, sensing the vibration through the ground, through the air, through the soles of their boots. Vera moved first. She didn't shout. She didn't reach for her weapon. Instead, she kicked Milo's shin, hard enough to send him stumbling backward into Hana, breaking his concentration on holding still. The distraction cost them nothing but dignity, and a sharp hiss of pain from the mechanic.
Keep moving.
Vera mouthed, though Rowan couldn't read lips in the gloom. He saw her body language shift, muscles coiling not for attack, but for retreat. She signaled with 2 fingers. North. Now. Rowan grabbed Milo by the back of his harness and hauled him upright before he could protest. Or scream. The mechanic's eyes were wide, pupils dilated to black saucers, but he nodded mutely, biting his lip until it bled. Hana stepped to the side, her datapad still glowing red, her other hand resting lightly on the shoulder of a rusted lamppost for balance. They moved as one unit, slow and deliberate, stepping over the threshold of the alleyway and back into the open plaza. The creature did not pursue. It remained at the mouth of the alley, its head rotating in a full circle, scanning the empty streets. When no further sound came from within, it slumped slightly, the tension leaving its frame, and began to slide back into the darkness, dissolving into the shadows as if it had never been there at all. Rowan didn't exhale until they were 50 meters away, around the corner of a collapsed bank. He leaned against the cold concrete wall, his lungs burning for air he hadn't realized he was holding. Milo slid down the wall, clutching his shin, breathing in short, ragged gasps.
That was an echo.
She didn't look at them. Her eyes were locked on her screen, where a new map of the area was being generated.
They are attracted to auditory stimuli.
The louder you are, the more solid they become. At high decibels, they can phase through matter. At low decibels, they are merely hungry. Hungry for what? Milo wheezed, wiping blood from his lip. For vibration, Hana said. For noise. If you scream, it will hear you. If you run and your boots hit the ground too hard, it will hear you. We need to move quietly. And we need to move fast. Rowan pushed off the wall. His legs felt like lead, but adrenaline was starting to override the fear. He looked at Vera. She was already checking her scanner again, frowning at the readout. The power grid is still active, she said, but it's fluctuating. The echoes. They're not random. They're patrolling. This isn't a dead station. It's a farm. Rowan frowned. A farm? Containment is a form of agriculture to them, Hana said. She tapped her screen, pulling up a file labeled Salvage Protocol 74 Alpha. The previous tenants didn't vanish. They were harvested. The corporation knew this before we landed. Rowan stared at her.
You knew? About the monsters?
I know that our contract includes hazard pay for extraterrestrial fauna.
Her tone flat.
I also know that if we meet quota by noon, we get to go home.
If we don't, someone else comes to replace us, and replacement implies termination of current assets. Vera lowered her scanner. That means we're the livestock now. No, Rowan said. He adjusted his scarf, feeling the copper taste in his throat again. It means we're the farmers, and we have a quota to fill. He looked north. The monolithic structure loomed larger, its surface covered in the same ghostly graffiti he'd seen from a distance. Now, up close, he could make out symbols carved into the metal. They weren't local dialects. They were English, standard galactic trade language. Do not bring anything back abroad. The words were scratched deeply into the metal, as if someone had tried to pry them out with a chisel. Beneath the main warning, smaller text repeated in different languages. It follows the signal. It comes home in your pack. It eats what you love. Rowan looked away from the building, his stomach turning over.
Why is that message here? Why did someone carve it, if everyone left?
Maybe they didn't all leave.
She started walking again, her pace quickening.
Or maybe some of them came back, and they brought something with them.
They moved across the plaza, sticking to the shadows of the buildings on the eastern side. The sun was beginning to dip below the horizon, casting long, jagged shadows that stretched toward them like grasping fingers. The sky above was a bruised purple, choked with smog that swirled in unnatural patterns. As they walked, Rowan noticed more details. Cars weren't just abandoned. They were stripped. Tires removed. Engines pulled out. Windows shattered inward. It looked as if someone had been scavenging for parts, slowly and methodically over the course of years. But there was no sign of life, no footprints in the dust, no tracks in the mud.
It's clean.
He was walking closer to Rowan now, his usual chatter suppressed by the lingering fear.
The place is too clean for something that eats noise.
Silence cleans.
She didn't break stride.
Echoes consume sound waves. They don't leave waste. They just erase.
Rowan glanced at Vera. She was scanning the rooftops again, her hand resting on her pistol but not drawing it. She knew something he didn't. He could see it in the set of her jaw, the tightness around her eyes. She had seen this before. Vera, Rowan said quietly. Have you been here before? She didn't look at him. I've seen echoes. How many crews have gone missing? 3 since I started. And how many came back? She stopped walking, turned to face him. Her eyes were hard, devoid of pity.
None.
The ones who came back didn't bring the same people back in their bodies. Or maybe they did. But they brought something else with them. Something that listens. Rowan felt a chill run down his spine that had nothing to do with the temperature. He looked at the building ahead of them, the reactor core hidden inside. The entrance was a gaping maw, dark and inviting.
We have to go in.
We do.
She tapped her pad again.
But we have to be smart about it.
Milo, you're on point. You make noise, controlled noise. Milo blinked. What? You're the loudest one here, Vera said. You panic when it's quiet. So you'll keep making small sounds, humming, tapping your foot, whispering to yourself. It keeps you from freezing up, and it masks your heartbeat from anything nearby that's closer than an echo.
That makes no sense.
His voice rising slightly before he caught himself and lowered it to a harsh whisper.
How does humming help?
It creates a buffer. Echoes are attracted to sudden spikes in volume.
Constant, low-level noise is background to them, like wind, like rain. You become part of the environment. Milo looked like he wanted to argue, but he nodded slowly. He started tapping his boot against the ground, a rhythmic thud-thud-thud that echoed softly in the empty street. He began to hum, a low, tuneless melody that vibrated in his chest. Rowan watched him, impressed despite himself. It was insane. It was terrifying. But it worked. The further they moved from the alley where the first creature had appeared, the less they felt the presence of being watched. They reached the entrance of the corporate headquarters. The doors were made of reinforced glass, now cracked and spiderwebbed. Through the fissures, they could see the interior lobby. It was vast, lit by emergency strips that flickered in time with the power grid. Desks sat in neat rows, chairs pushed in neatly. Computers hummed softly, screens blank but powered, and on every desk there was a cup, hundreds of them. Ceramic, plastic, metal, all empty, all dusty. Rowan stepped through the broken glass, the shards crunching under his boots. The sound was sharp, jarring in the silence that followed Milo's humming. He froze, waiting for something to attack. Nothing came. Inside, the air was cool and sterile, smelling of ozone and old coffee. It felt preserved, like a museum exhibit left open to the elements.
Stay close.
She moved to the left, covering one flank. Rowan took the right. Hana stayed in the center, her datapad scanning every corner. Milo continued his rhythmic tapping, his humming growing slightly louder as they went deeper into the building. The hallway stretched out before them, long and straight. Lights flickered overhead, buzzing like trapped insects. At the end of the hall, a stairwell led down. The indicator light above it was green. Reactor core access.
Down there, 2 levels below. We'll need to breach the airlock.
Airlock? Why do we need an airlock inside a building?
Hana stopped walking. She pointed to the wall next to the stairwell. There, painted in faded red letters, was another warning. It had been crossed out with black marker, but the words were still legible. Do not open the door, because it's not inside.
Hana said.
It's under. Rowan looked at the heavy steel door marked Airlock 1. It was sealed tight, no handle, only a keypad. But around the edges, the metal was warped, as if something had tried to break out from the other side with tremendous force. Who wrote this? Milo asked, his humming faltering for a second. He corrected himself, picking up the rhythm again. The workers? Everyone did, Hana said. It's a common phrase across all abandoned stations. A psychological anchor. A reminder of what happens when you fail. Fail at what? Vera asked. She was examining a security camera on the ceiling, its lens cracked and dark. Quota. Or survival. Hana looked at Rowan. Her eyes were sad, but her face remained impassive. Both. If we meet quota, we survive the day. If we fail quota, we die. Either way, the experiment continues. Rowan felt a knot form in his stomach. He looked at the keypad. It was dead, no power. He pulled a multi-tool from his belt, examining the mechanism.
I can bypass it. But I need time.
Time is a luxury we don't have.
She pointed to the far end of the hallway. A shadow moved. Fast. Too fast for human movement. It slid along the wall, disappearing into a darkened office before anyone could get a good look.
Echoes are getting bolder, or they're hurting us.
Hurt us where?
He knelt by the keypad, his fingers moving quickly as he stripped wires from his tool.
Deeper in, towards the core. They want to see if we can complete the task, or if we break first.
Rowan finished the bypass and slammed the tool against the release lever. With a groan of protesting metal, the door cracked open. Cold air rushed out, carrying with it a smell that made Rowan's stomach turn. It smelled like ozone, yes, but underneath that, there was something else. Something organic. Wet and sweet. God, Milo whispered. His humming stopped abruptly. What is that smell?
Bacteria. Decomposition. But accelerated.
Rowan looked at the open door. Beyond it, a staircase descended into darkness. The walls were covered in slime. Thick, viscous trails of amber fluid coated the concrete, dripping down in slow motion.
We go down.
He stood up, brushing dust from his knees.
We get the reactor core. We meet quota. We get paid. Then we leave.
And if something comes with us?
Her hand was on her pistol again. Rowan looked at her.
Then we'll deal with it. But right now, our biggest problem is staying alive until noon.
He stepped into the stairwell. Milo followed, resuming his humming, though it sounded thinner now, more desperate. Hana brought up the rear, her datapad scanning the slime trails. Vera covered their retreat, her eyes scanning the shadows of the lobby behind them. As they descended, the air grew heavier. The humidity increased, clinging to their skin. The lights flickered more frequently, plunging them into darkness for seconds at a time. In those moments, Rowan felt it. A presence. Watching. Waiting. Listening, he didn't look back. He couldn't. Because if he looked back, he might see something standing in the dark behind them. Something that wasn't there when he turned around. And that was the worst part of the whole journey. Not the monsters, not the debt, but the certainty that they were being watched by something that knew their names. And it was learning how to say,
like wind.
The word hung in the damp air, heavy and final. He turned his back on the stairwell, his boots clicking sharply against the metal grate of the upper landing.
Let's find a terminal that still has juice.
Hana didn't look up from her pad.
The mainframe is 3 floors up, past the executive offices.
Great.
Stopping his hum for just a second to spit on the floor. The sound was wet and loud in the sudden silence.
I hate offices. Too many places for things to hide behind filing cabinets.
Vera moved past him, her boots silent on the grating. She paused at the edge of the shadowed corridor leading toward the elevators.
Elevators are dead. We climb.
Rowan checked the charge on his sidearm, then looked at the towering stack of desks ahead. Through the gloom, he could see the faint glow of a single monitor in the distance, pulsing like a dying heart. It was their only landmark in a sea of abandoned furniture and corporate despair.
Lead the way.
The climb was an exercise in controlled panic. The emergency stairs were narrow concrete funnels that smelled of stale urine and rusted iron. Every step echoed with a hollow clank that seemed to bounce off the walls, vibrating in Rowan's teeth. He kept his breathing shallow, forcing the air through his nose to avoid the loud exhale that would give away their position to whatever was listening above or below. Hana led the ascent, her datapad casting a sickly green light on the dust-coated handrails. She moved with practiced efficiency, checking corners without slowing her pace. Her eyes were fixed on the screen, scrolling through dense blocks of text that Rowan couldn't read from behind her. Every time Milo took a step too loudly, Hana would pause, press a finger to her lips, and wait until the sound faded before moving again.
Quiet.
She mouthed. No words. Just the gesture. Rowan swallowed hard. The taste of copper was back in his mouth, sharp and metallic. He focused on the rhythm of his own boots, placing each one carefully on the concrete tread to minimize impact. Behind him, Milo's breathing was a ragged wheeze. The mechanic was trying to keep up, but his heavy pack clanked against the wall with every lurch forward. Clank. A pause. Silence stretched tight as a piano wire. Rowan squeezed his sidearm tighter. His knuckles turned white. He scanned the darkness above them. Nothing moved in the gloom except for the shifting patterns of dust motes caught in Hana's light.
Keep moving.
Vera's voice came from the rear, low and steady. She wasn't whispering. She was just speaking normally, which meant she didn't think anything was close enough to care about volume yet. The quota timer is ticking. We're burning daylight. Rowan checked his wrist comp. The digital numbers glowed red in the dim stairwell. 04 to 12:07. 4 hours and 12 minutes until they failed. 4 hours and 12 minutes before the corporate drones came to collect their bodies for recycling. He pushed down the surge of adrenaline and kept climbing. They reached the 7th floor. The air here was different. Colder, drier, and quieter. The hum of the building's infrastructure had faded, replaced by a profound stillness that felt heavy in the lungs. Hana stopped at a reinforced glass door. It was shattered inward, shards lying across the threshold like broken ice. Beyond it lay the executive corridor. It was pristine compared to the rest of the station. The carpet was intact, though gray with age. The walls were lined with framed certifications and corporate mottos that had peeled away from the plaster. Excellence through sacrifice. Your labor is our legacy. Rowan stepped over the glass. It crunched under his boot, a sound that made him flinch. He didn't look back at the others. He couldn't afford to check if they were safe behind him. That was Vera's job.
Terminal room is ahead.
Her voice was tight. She kept her datapad raised like a shield.
But we have company.
Rowan stopped. Ahead, in the center of the corridor, stood a figure. It was tall, too tall to be human. Its limbs were elongated, jointed at impossible angles, hanging down past its knees. The skin was translucent, revealing a network of black veins pulsing beneath the surface. It didn't move. It didn't breathe. It just stood there, facing the wall, its head tilted at a grotesque angle. "Lantern Weaver," Vera whispered from behind him. Her voice was calm, but her hand drifted toward the pulse rifle slung across her back. "Don't make a sound." The creature's skin shimmered, reflecting the light from Hana's pad. In its webbed hands, it held a strand of glowing silk, delicate and bright as starlight. The light pulsed slowly, rhythmically. Thump-thump, like a heartbeat. Rowan looked at the floor around the creature. The carpet was shredded in a perfect circle. Scratches marred the walls on both sides, deep gouges where something had clawed its way up and down the structure repeatedly.
It's weaving.
His voice was barely audible.
It's building a nest.
Stay behind it.
Hana instructed.
She pointed to the left side of the corridor, where a large executive office door stood ajar. The terminal room is in that office. We walk past it, silent as ghosts. Rowan nodded. He took a step forward, placing his boot on the edge of the carpet where the weaver wasn't standing. The creature twitched. Its head rotated slowly, smoothly toward them. The eyes were not eyes, but clusters of bioluminescent nodes that flared bright yellow for a second before dimming again. It hadn't seen them, or it had chosen to ignore them. Rowan exhaled slowly. He moved forward, inch by inch. Milo followed, his movements jerky and stiff. Hana glided like a shadow. Vera brought up the rear, her rifle raised, tracking the darkness behind them as much as the threat in front. They were 3 feet from the weaver when the light changed. The yellow nodes flared again. Brighter this time. Hotter. The creature's head snapped toward Rowan with a speed that blurred the air. Its mouth opened, revealing rows of needle-thin teeth that glistened with clear, sticky fluid. Rowan froze. His heart hammered against his ribs like a trapped bird. He wanted to run, he wanted to shoot, but he knew the rules. The weaver wasn't attacking, it was waiting for a sound, a noise to make it solid enough to kill. If he made a sound now, it would become real, and if it became real, they were dead. The creature's limbs uncoiled, stretching toward them. The glowing silk in its hands began to vibrate, emitting a high-pitched whine that set Rowan's teeth on edge. It was singing, or calling. Don't move. Rowan held his breath until his lungs burned. He kept his eyes locked on the creature's face, watching every twitch of its neck, every flicker of the light in its nodes. Milo was shaking violently beside him. Rowan could see the sweat dripping from the mechanic's nose. One drop fell to the carpet. Plink. The sound was tiny, insignificant, but in the silence of the corridor, it was a thunderclap. The weaver shrieked. It wasn't a vocalization. It was the sound of silk tearing. The creature lunged, not at Rowan, but at the light source, Hana's data pad. Its long arms whipped out, fingers grasping for the glowing screen.
Run.
The word hung in the air. A mistake. As soon as Vera spoke, the shadows in the corners of the room detached themselves from the walls. Figures emerged from the darkness. Tall, thin, human-shaped but wrong. Their faces were smooth blanks of flesh, featureless except for gaping holes where mouths should be. But Rowan could hear them. He could hear their voices, overlapping and distorted, repeating words they had stolen from the past. Quota, met, employee, hail. Failure is optional. Rowan's head snapped toward the voices. He recognized his name. It was spoken in his sister's voice. The tone was gentle, soothing. Come home, Rowan. Just come home. He took a step forward, mesmerized by the sound. His feet moved without his permission, drawn toward the source of the voice like a moth to a flame. The hollow men were closing in, their featureless faces inches from his own, their mouths opening wide to let out more stolen whispers.
Rowan!
Milo's voice cut through the haze. It was loud, frantic. Look at me! Look at my face! Milo grabbed Rowan's shoulder, shaking him hard. The contact broke the spell. Rowan blinked, reality snapping back into focus. The weaver was diving for Hana. The hollow men were 10 feet away. Vera was firing her rifle, the pulses of light illuminating the room in strobe-like flashes that revealed the monsters only for a split second before plunging them back into darkness.
Move.
He didn't think. He just ran. He sprinted toward the executive office, his boots slamming against the carpet. Milo stumbled after him, tripping over his own pack but scrambling up instantly. Hana was already inside the room, slamming her shoulder against the heavy door. It held firm. Locked. Open it, Vera shouted, covering them with suppressing fire. The plasma bolts hit the walls where the hollow men had been standing a second ago. When the smoke cleared, the creatures were gone, only their voices remaining, echoing from every corner of the building.
I need a code, Hana yelled. She tapped furiously at her pad.
The system is encrypted. It's not responding to my biosignature. Rowan skidded to a halt in front of the door. He looked at the keypad embedded in the frame. It was old tech. Physical locks, no digital encryption, just a manual override lever hidden behind a false panel.
Stand back.
He kicked the wall beside the lock. Plaster crumbled away, revealing a rusted metal box. He ripped the cover off with his bare hands, ignoring the bite of broken glass into his palm. Inside was a manual crank. He grabbed it and spun it clockwise. Gears ground together with a screech that echoed down the hall. The door shuddered, then swung inward. They tumbled inside. Rowan kicked the door shut behind them and threw the deadbolt. Through the small reinforced window in the center, he saw Vera dragging Milo and Hannah into the room just as the weaver crashed against the other side of the glass. The creature's hands left smears of glowing slime on the pane. Its eyes pressed against the glass, wide and unblinking. Then, the hollow men appeared around it. Their faceless heads tilted in unison, staring at the window. At them, quota. Unmet, employee, hail. The voice inside Rowan's head grew louder. The taste of copper flooded his mouth again, bitter and strong. He felt a wave of dizziness wash over him. The voices weren't just sound. They were pressure, pushing against his mind, trying to crack the shell of his sanity.
We're safe for now.
She was breathing hard, leaning against the wall. Her datapad was dark, cracked from the jump.
But they're not leaving.
Rowan looked at the terminal desk in front of him. A single monitor glowed softly on its surface. The screen displayed a progress bar. Download complete. 98%. What is downloading? Rowan asked. His voice sounded foreign to his own ears, thick and distant. Hannah walked over to the desk, her movements stiff. She picked up a small drive from the port next to the monitor. Containment protocols, she said. Her face was pale.
For the station, Milo asked. He was crouched by the window, watching the monsters outside.
What does that mean?
It means this station isn't just abandoned.
She turned to look at them, her eyes wide with a terror she hadn't shown before. It's a cage. Rowan frowned. He looked back at the window. The weaver was still there, but now more figures were joining it. Dozens of them, shimmering in the dark hallway beyond. They weren't attacking anymore. They were waiting. Why are they waiting? Vera asked. She had reloaded her rifle, her hands steady despite the chaos. And why do they know your name, Rowan? Rowan looked at his hand. The cut from the glass was bleeding. The blood was dark, almost black in the dim light of the terminal room. He wiped it on his pants, leaving a streak that seemed to pulse faintly. I don't know, Rowan said. But he did. He could feel them, not just outside, inside, in the walls, in the air. They weren't hunting them. They were herding them. Towards the reactor core, the progress bar on the screen ticked over. 100%. A chime sounded. Pleasant. Cheerful. Like a microwave finishing its cycle. Quota met, the computer voice announced. Employee hail. Congratulations. Rowan stared at the screen. The words glowed in his vision, bright and mocking. He felt a cold knot form in his stomach. They hadn't done anything yet. They hadn't even started the mission.
What does that mean? Milo whispered.
We haven't recovered anything. Hannah looked at the drive in her hand, then at the others. Her expression was grim.
It means they let us in.
They wanted us to come down here, to the core. Rowan backed away from the desk. The room suddenly felt smaller, the air thicker. The lights flickered, once, twice, then steadied. We're not the salvage crew, Hannah said softly. We're the test subjects. She didn't wait for him to process the weight of her words. She tossed the small data drive onto the desk, sending it skittering across the polished wood toward the edge. It clattered against a coffee mug that had somehow remained upright through the chaos. The ceramic base scraped against the surface, a harsh sound in the tense silence.
It's not just us.
She walked to the terminal. her fingers flying over the keys as if she were trying to outrun the implication of what they had just heard.
Look at the metadata.
Rowan stepped closer despite the dread pooling in his gut. The screen flickered, lines of code cascading down in green and amber. It looked like a system log, but the entries were wrong. Too clean, too deliberate. There were timestamps, coordinates, and then results. Not salvage reports, survival rates. 23 crews. Hana read aloud, her voice flat. Assigned to Sector 4 over the last 6 years. 22 failed. 1 survived. 1? Milo asked. He stopped crouching by the window. The Weaver was still there, pressing its faceless snout against the glass, but it hadn't moved. It watched them with a stillness that felt predatory. Who made it out? Employee number 892, Hannah said. She tapped the screen. A profile picture appeared. A woman with short black hair and tired eyes. Rowan recognized her face from the induction video he'd watched on the shuttle. It was Elena Rostova, a senior engineer. He had shared a meal with her 3 nights ago in the mess hall.
Where is she? Vera asked. She lowered her rifle slightly, her knuckles white around the grip.
Is she here? In the station? No, Hannah said. She zoomed out on the map view. A red dot pulsed far away, near the docking bay. She's gone. But look at what she took. The screen shifted. A list of items appeared next to her profile. Most were standard-issue tools. Plasma cutters, scan packs, ration bars. But at the bottom, highlighted in yellow, was an entry that made Rowan's blood run cold. Sample collection vials. 4. Status. Active.
She took samples.
The realization hit him like a physical blow. Of what? Hannah didn't answer. She turned to face them, her expression darkening. She didn't take scrap. She took them. She trapped something. Or she was bitten by something and didn't realize it. The lights in the office dimmed. Not a flicker this time. A deep, deliberate dimming, as if the building itself was holding its breath. The hum of the servers behind them dropped an octave, becoming a low thrum that vibrated in Rowan's teeth.
Then why are we here? Vera asked. She checked her rifle's charge level, though it was full. She didn't need the gun anymore. She needed to know what she was fighting.
If they knew Elena brought something back. If they knew the experiment is leaking.
Because they're containing it?
And we're the pressure valve. Rowan looked at the window again. The Weaver hadn't moved. But now 2 more figures were standing beside it. Tall, slender, wrapped in tattered suits that looked like they had been worn for decades. Their faces were blank. Hollow men. They stood side by side, perfectly still, staring into the room. They're not attacking, Milo said. His voice was high, tight with panic. Why aren't they attacking? I'm making enough noise to wake the dead. Or at least give myself an aneurysm. Because you're doing exactly what we're supposed to do, Hannah said. She tapped a key on the terminal. A new window opened. It showed a live feed from outside the office door. The hallway was filled with shadows. Dozens of them. Not just hollow men. Lantern weavers hung from the ceiling, their glowing strands pulsing in rhythm with the station's power grid. Glass giants stood motionless in the corners, crystalline bodies refracting the emergency lights into prismatic shards.
The station is waking up. It knows we're here.
It knows we're afraid. Of course it knows, Vera said. She stepped back from the window, putting distance between herself and the glass. It's a trap. The whole thing is a trap. Rowan looked at the terminal. The quota met message was still glowing on the screen, mocking them. But beneath it, a new prompt had appeared. Next objective. Extract reactor core component beta. Location sublevel 3. Time limit 45 minutes.
45 minutes.
He felt a strange calm settle over him, cold and sharp. The fear was still there, buzzing in his nerves, but it was manageable now. There was a goal, a task, something to focus on other than the fact that their lives were likely already forfeit. That's not enough time to get down there, clear a path, and come back. We don't have a choice.
Hannah said. She grabbed her data pad from the desk. The screen was cracked, but it still worked.
If we don't meet that quota, the station doesn't just fail us, it kills us, probably by letting everything in here out.
Or it seals us in.
Her eyes were fixed on the ceiling vents, seals the room off, and fills it with gas. Rowan looked at his team. Milo was pale, sweating through his shirt. Hannah was shaking, but her mind was clearly racing through protocols. Vera was ready to fight, but she was looking for an exit that didn't exist. "We go down," Rowan said. He turned to the door. "But we don't walk in there blindly." "How?" Milo asked. "They can hear us. See us. Smell us if they're lantern weavers." "No," Rowan said. He looked at the terminal again. "Hannah, can you loop the audio feed from this room? Play it on a delay?" Hannah blinked, then nodded. Yes, I can record ambient sound and replay it." "Why?" "Because if we make noise here, while we move there," Rowan said, pointing at the window, "it creates a dissonance, a blind spot." He looked at Vera.
Can you jam their visual sensors? The ones they use to track us? Vera shook her head.
"I don't have EMP grenades. Not enough range."
Then we use what we have.
He ripped the monitor off the desk, the cables tearing with a snap of plastic and wire. The screen went dark. He grabbed a chair and smashed it against the wall, sending splinters flying.
Milo, you're on distraction duty. You scream, you bang things, you make as much noise as you possibly can. Right here.
Milo stared at him.
You want me to be the bait?
"I want you to be the loudmouth," Rowan corrected, "while we slip out the back maintenance shaft. Hannah, you know the schematics. Find us a path that doesn't cross their patrol routes. Vera, cover our backs. We move in 3 minutes." Milo opened his mouth to protest, then closed it. He looked at the window, at the hollow figures waiting for them to make a mistake. He swallowed hard. "All right, loudmouth duty. My specialty." He raised his plasma cutter and fired a burst into the metal filing cabinet opposite him. The machine groaned, sparks showering down. Milo screamed, a raw, guttural sound that echoed through the office. Rowan didn't look back. He grabbed Hannah's arm and pulled her toward the far wall, where a service panel had been. Pried loose during the initial breach, Vera followed, her rifle raised, scanning the corners for movement. They squeezed through the gap in the wall, emerging into a narrow corridor lined with pipes and cables. It smelled of oil and rust, a stark contrast to the sterile ozone of the office. The darkness here was absolute, broken only by the faint glow of Hannah's pad. "Left," Hannah whispered. She moved silently, her feet finding purchase on the grating without a sound. 200 meters, then down. Rowan kept his pace slow, deliberate. Every step was calculated, every breath was shallow. He could hear Milo's screaming echoing through the vents behind them, getting louder, more frantic. It was working. The station's attention was being pulled away from their trail, drawn toward the spectacle in the office. They walked for 5 minutes in silence. The corridor twisted and turned, leading them deeper into the bowels of the building. The air grew colder, damp with condensation that slicked Rowan's skin. His boots made no sound on the metal grating. He focused on the rhythm of his own heart, forcing it to slow. "Don't think about the debt," he told himself. "Don't think about Sarah." He thought about the reactor core, the physical object they needed to extract. If they could get it, they might survive. Maybe, but survival was a relative term in this place. "Halt," Hannah whispered. She raised a hand, signaling them to stop. She pointed ahead. Through a gap in the piping, Rowan could see a large chamber. It was a storage bay, filled with rows of cryopods. Most were dark, empty shells, but one was lit, glowing with a soft blue light. Inside stood a figure. It wasn't human. It was tall, its limbs elongated and jointed in too many places. Its skin was translucent, revealing organs that pulsed with a sickly green fluid. It floated in the liquid, eyes closed, breathing slowly.
Elena,
She's still alive? Rowan squinted. The figure in the pod looked familiar. The hair was shorter now, shaven close to the scalp. But the face, it was Elena, or what was left of her. Her skin was pale, almost gray. Veins traced black lines across her neck. She's being kept, Rowan said. Not for study, for containment. Why? Vera asked. Her voice was barely a whisper. Because she's the carrier, Hannah said. She moved closer to the gap, peering in. Look at the monitors next to the pod. Heart rate stable. Neural activity, normal. But the bioscans show foreign DNA integration. 80%. She's part of it now, Rowan said. The realization made him feel sick.
The station didn't just trap her. It changed her.
Can we take her? Vera asked. No, Hannah said firmly. If she's the key to the containment, taking her breaks the seal. Or wakes whatever is sleeping inside her. Rowan looked at the pod. He wanted to reach out, to knock on the glass and see if Elena would open her eyes. But he couldn't move. The figure remained still, floating in its own personal nightmare.
We need to go.
He turned away from the chamber. We're not here to save anyone. We're here to get out. Hannah nodded, though her eyes lingered on the pod for a second longer. She led them deeper into the station, down another spiral staircase that smelled of stagnant water and decay. The stairs were old, rusted hinges groaning under their weight. As they descended, Rowan heard something else. A sound, low, rhythmic, and wet. Thump, thump. It came from the darkness below. Something massive was moving down there. Something that shook the walls with every step.
Hollow men don't move like that.
He had stopped screaming, for now. His voice trembled.
That's bigger.
That's a glass giant.
Hannah said. She didn't look up from her pad. Her face was grim.
And it's guarding the reactor. Rowan felt a cold sweat break out on his back. He gripped his sidearm tighter, his knuckles white. They were walking into a lion's den. And the lions knew they were coming.
Keep moving.
His voice was steady. Stay quiet. Stay low. They reached the bottom of the stairs and stepped onto a platform overlooking the reactor core. It was a vast cavern, lit by the eerie green glow of radioactive coolant. In the center stood a massive machine, its gears turning slowly, pumping fluid through thick pipes that disappeared into the walls. And standing in front of it, blocking the path, was a glass giant. It was 12 feet tall, its body a jagged mass of crystalline shards. It moved with impossible speed for something so large, shifting its weight from one foot to the next without making a sound. But Rowan could see its head turning, sensing them. Waiting. Hannah, Rowan said softly. Is there another way? The primary access is blocked, Hannah whispered back. We have to go through the coolant maintenance tunnel. That's flooded, Milo added. With what? Acidic sludge, Hannah said. Corrosive enough to melt steel in minutes. Rowan looked at the giant, then at the dark tunnel ahead. The giant wasn't looking at them anymore. It was focused on something else. A shadow was moving behind it. Another figure. Larger. Darker. What is that? Vera asked. Rowan's blood ran cold. He recognized the shape. The posture. The company, he said. They're here too. Hannah's eyes widened, the reflection of the reactor's green glow fracturing in her pupils. She tapped her datapad, the screen casting a pale blue light on her face. It's not the company, she corrected, her voice tight. It's one of their containment units. Model FAR. Silent. Silent how? Vera asked, her rifle snapping toward the shifting darkness behind the giant. It doesn't breathe. It doesn't blink. It just exists until it touches you. Then it absorbs you. Hannah's fingers flew across the screen. The glass giants freeze when observed. But Model 5Us don't care about sight. They track heartbeats. Heart rate over 120. You're dead? Under 80? He might slip past. Rowan looked down at his wrist. The biomonitor on his suit wrist was glowing red. 128 BPM. His heart hammered against his ribs like a trapped bird. He forced himself to take a slow, deep breath. In, out, slowly. The number dropped. 124, then 12D. Milo. Rowan whispered. "Stop moving." Milo froze mid-step, one foot hovering over the grating. His eyes were wide, fixed on the jagged crystal monster blocking their path. The giant's head rotated with a sound like grinding ice. It was looking at them, or rather, it was listening to them.
I can't. My heart is trying to kill me.
Mine too.
Vera said. She was pressing herself against the cold wall of the tunnel entrance, her body tense.
If we run, it will hear us. If we stand still, it might see us.
We don't run.
She pointed to a narrow maintenance hatch high on the wall, near the ceiling.
The coolant tunnels are flooded with acid, but the air ducts above them? They're dry, and they bypass the giant's patrol zone.
Up there? Rowan looked at the smooth, unbroken metal wall. No handholds, no ladder. Just a seamless sheet of steel.
I can rig a magnetic grapple, but I need time.
And I need silence. The glass giant took a step forward. The sound was deafening, a sharp crack that echoed through the cavern. The shadow behind it stirred. It was tall, impossibly thin, its limbs elongated and jointed in ways that hurt Rowan's eyes to follow. It had no face, only a smooth, featureless surface where a head should be. "It's turning," Vera hissed. "It knows we're here." 3 minutes, Hannah said. "I need 3 minutes of absolute silence." Rowan looked at the giant, then at the shadow, then at his crew. He nodded. Milo swallowed hard. He opened his mouth to speak, then clamped it shut. His hands trembled. Rowan reached out and grabbed Milo's shoulder, squeezing it firmly. "Stay down," he didn't say, but Milo understood. He dropped to one knee, pulling his plasma cutter low. Vera moved like a ghost, sliding along the wall toward Hannah. She placed a hand on Hannah's back, guiding her away from the edge of the platform. They huddled in the shadows near the base of the wall, where the air was cooler and the smell of ozone was strongest. Hannah pulled a small device from her belt, a magnetic grapple launcher. She aimed it at the ceiling hatch, then fired. The tiny projectile whined through the air, striking the metal with a soft thud. A green light blinked on the device. It held.
It's locked, but the mechanism is rusted. I have to pry it open from the inside.
"Go," Rowan said. He moved to the edge of the platform, positioning himself between his team and the giant. He raised his sidearm, not aiming to shoot. Shooting would make noise, but just to hold the weapon steady. His heart was slowing now, forced into a rhythm by sheer will. Thump, 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 thump. The glass giant took another step. Closer. The crystals on its body clicked together, a sound like rain on glass. It tilted its head. It was listening for his fear, for his panic. Behind the giant, the shadow shifted. It lunged forward with terrifying speed, a blur of darkness that slammed into the side of the giant's crystalline form. The giant shrieked, a high, piercing sound that shattered every remaining window in the room, and froze. Its body locked rigid, turning into a statue of ice and stone. The shadow didn't attack again. It circled around the frozen giant, moving toward them. "Run," Hannah said. Not loudly, just 2 syllables. They ran, not up to the ceiling, not away from the shadow, but under it. Rowan grabbed Milo by the collar of his suit and dragged him forward. Vera followed, her rifle barking once, a single, suppressed shot into the darkness behind them to distract whatever was pursuing them. Hannah scrambled after them, her grapple line trailing behind her like a lifeline. They hit the floor running. The acid sludge below them hissed, bubbles rising from the surface where droplets of coolant had leaked through the grating. It smelled of sulfur and burnt copper. The shadow lunged again. It passed through Rowan, cold and empty, but it left a trail of frost on his suit. He could feel it biting into the fabric, seeking warmth, seeking life. "Hannah! Now!" he shouted. She reached the wall. She pulled herself up, her muscles straining against the gravity dampeners in her boots. The grapple line held. She kicked off the wall, swinging upward toward the maintenance hatch. Rowan followed, grabbing Hannah's ankle as she hung there. He pulled himself up, his fingers scraping against the cold metal of the hatch. Milo was next, panting heavily, his face pale. Vera brought up the rear, her movements graceful and desperate. They scrambled into the duct. It was narrow, barely wide enough for their shoulders. The air inside was stale, filled with the dust of decades. Hannah pulled the grapple line in, retracting it toward her belt. The hatch slid shut behind them with a heavy clank, sealing them in darkness. Silence. Then, the sound of the glass giant shattering. It broke free from the shadow's hold, its crystalline form cracking under the strain of motion. It let out a roar that vibrated through the metal walls of the duct.
Keep moving.
His voice was low, urgent. Don't stop. Don't look back. They crawled forward. The duct twisted and turned, sloping downward toward the heart of the station. The heat grew intense, suffocating. Sweat poured down Rowan's face, stinging his eyes. He wiped it away with the back of his hand, leaving a smear of dirt on his skin. "How much further?" Milo asked. His voice was shaky, barely audible over the sound of their own breathing. 200 meters, Hannah said. She was checking her pad again, her face illuminated by the faint blue light. "Then we drop into the coolant maintenance tunnel. It's flooded with acid, but it connects to the secondary lift shaft. We can get to the reactor core from there." "Acid?" Vera asked. "Strong," Hannah said. "Diluted enough to melt metal, but not strong enough to dissolve our suits instantly. We have maybe 10 minutes before the seals start to fail. 10 minutes. Rowan checked his oxygen levels. 85% he had plenty of air. But he didn't have plenty of time." They reached the end of the duct. A ladder dropped down into the darkness below. The air from the shaft below was hot, humid, and thick with the smell of ozone and something else, something sweet and rotting. "Bottom," Hannah said. "We drop." Rowan went first. He slid down the ladder, his boots finding purchase on the rungs. The descent was slow, deliberate. He could hear the sound of water below him, rushing water. He hit the bottom with a thud, his knees bending to absorb the impact. The room was dark, lit only by the faint glow of bioluminescent algae clinging to the walls. The floor was submerged in waist-deep acid. It bubbled softly where it touched his boots.
Careful.
"The grating is unstable." Vera followed, her movements fluid and quiet. She landed silently beside him, her rifle ready. Then Milo, who stumbled slightly as he hit the water. He hissed in pain, looking down at his leg. "It's burning through my suit," he shouted. "Move faster!" Hannah called from above. She was already climbing down another ladder further back. Rowan grabbed Milo by the arm and pulled him forward. The acid was hot, seeping through the microscopic tears in their exosuits. It felt like walking on coals. He ignored the pain, focusing on the path ahead. The tunnel opened up into a massive chamber. In the center, surrounded by a ring of thick, reinforced glass, was the reactor core. It pulsed with a rhythmic pulsing light, green, then blue, then red. But it wasn't alone. Standing in front of the glass barrier were 3 figures. They were tall, thin, and wore black uniforms with no insignia. Their faces were hidden behind mirrored visors.
The company.
His voice was flat, disappointed. One of the figures stepped forward. It raised a hand, not in threat, but in greeting. Or perhaps in dismissal. Rowan Hale, a voice echoed through the chamber. It was synthesized, genderless, and devoid of emotion. "You have exceeded quota by 400%. Congratulations." Rowan stared at the figure. He felt a cold anger rise in his chest, colder than the shadow that had passed through him moments before. "Congratulations," he said. "For what? For letting you watch us crawl through acid for an hour?" "For your resilience," the voice replied. "The experiment requires subjects who can endure extreme stress. You have performed admirably." "What experiment?" Vera asked, her rifle raised. "Containment testing," Hannah said quietly. She wasn't looking at Rowan or the figures. She was looking at the reactor core. "They're not trying to save the station. They're trying to see what happens when we bring the infection home." Rowan looked at her, then at the figures, then at the reactor core. It wasn't a power source, it was a prison, and they had just broken the seal. The glass barrier around the core began to crack. A single hairline fracture appeared in the center, then another and another.
It's waking up.
The figures didn't move. They just watched, waiting for the show to begin. The fracture widened with a sound like breaking bone. The green light inside turned violet, spiking through the air like radiation sickness. Rowan didn't wait for an explanation. He grabbed Vera's shoulder and yanked her toward the tunnel entrance.
Run.
Milo was already there, his face pale in the strobing light. Hana stood frozen, her datapad slipping from her fingers to hit the acid with a hiss. The figures in black uniforms didn't move. They just watched the cracks spread, their mirrored visors reflecting the growing storm of violet energy. "Is this part of the quota?" Milo screamed, his voice cracking over the hum of the reactor. "No," Hana said. She finally looked up. Her eyes were wide, not with fear, but with recognition. "It's part of the test." The glass gave way. Not with an explosion, but a sigh. The violet light spilled out like water from a broken dam, rushing toward them across the flooded floor. It didn't burn. It whispered, and for a second, Rowan heard his sister's voice inside it. He turned and ran into the dark, pulling Milo with him. Behind them, the violet light chased their footsteps, eating the air as it went. The acid ate through the rubber soles of Rowan's boots with a sharp hiss, releasing plumes of acrid smoke that burned his throat. He didn't slow down. His lungs screamed for air that wasn't thick with ozone and rot, but he forced each step forward, dragging Milo by the back of his harness. The boy was heavy, dead weight in every sense, his legs trailing through the bubbling green slurry. Rowan felt the heat seeping into his own skin, a phantom fire beneath the exosuit's insulation layers. To his left, Vera moved like liquid shadow. She didn't run. She flowed, her rifle held low but ready, her eyes scanning the corridor walls for structural weaknesses or pursuing threats. Behind them, Hana was sprinting, her breathing ragged, her datapad clutched to her chest like a talisman. The violet light followed at their heels, not as a beam or a cloud, but as a distortion in reality. Itself. It warped the air, making the distant walls ripple like water under glass. Where it touched the acid floor, the liquid boiled instantly, turning white and silent.
Left! Vera shouted, pointing down a side corridor that smelled of stale dust and old grease.
The service lift. 30 meters. Rowan twisted his hips, dragging Milo into the turn. The movement tore at the seams of his suit, but he kept moving. The violet whisper grew louder as they turned, resolving into fragments of words he recognized. Sister, debt, failure, come home.
Shut up.
Though he knew it wasn't speaking, it was mimicking, learning. They hit the metal grating of the service corridor. It rang under their boots, a clear, metallic sound that seemed to agitate the pursuing light. The violet hue flared brighter, intensifying where the grating let it through from below.
Don't look down, Hana warned, her voice tight.
It feeds on visual confirmation.
I can't help it.
Milo wheezed, his face pressed against Rowan's shoulder as they stumbled toward the lift cage.
It sounds like you're crying, Rowan.
"I'm not crying," Rowan snapped, kicking the heavy iron door of the lift shaft open. He shoved Milo inside first, then followed. Vera was already there, hammering the manual override for the cage's ascent. Hana scrambled in last, slamming her body against the closing doors just as a tendril of violet light lashed out, scorching the edge of the metal frame. The cage lurched upward. Rowan slumped against the cold wall, his chest heaving. He looked down at Milo. The mechanic's leg was swollen. The fabric of his suit melted away to reveal skin that was blistered and raw. Blood seeped into the acid-soaked floor below them, but it didn't mix with the green slurry. It floated in perfect crimson droplets, repelled by the chemical reaction.
Your leg. I need to see it. Milo shook his head, forcing a weak smile that didn't reach his eyes.
Not now. Later. When we're rich. Or dead. Whichever comes first. Vera paced the small space, her rifle raised to the ceiling of the shaft. She was checking the depth gauge on her wrist computer.
We have 200 meters of ascent before we hit the secondary access deck. Then it's a long walk to the extraction point.
Extraction? Hana laughed, a sharp, brittle sound. She wiped sweat from her forehead, leaving a streak of dirt across her brow.
There is no extraction, Vera. The Ledger doesn't send rescue ships for failed tests, it sends cleanup crews. Rowan sat up, wincing as his own legs protested.
What do you mean? Hana pulled her datapad closer, the screen glowing faintly in the dim light.
I've been analyzing the company protocols I stole from their private servers.
The salvage quotas are a cover story. Every crew we've seen before us, none of them returned. Not really. Their ships were found drifting, empty, no bodies, just uniforms, neatly folded. And the reactors? Rowan asked. Why do they care if we get there? Because the reactors aren't just power sources, Hana said, tapping the screen to zoom in on a schematic of the station's core. They're containment units. The glass giants, the hollow men. They aren't natural phenomena. They're biological filters, designed to keep what's inside in. Rowan felt a chill that had nothing to do with the temperature. And us? We're the stress test, Vera said quietly, lowering her rifle. They wanted to see if human subjects could survive long enough to trigger the final release mechanism. If we had reached the core and touched it, if we had opened it. Rowan looked at his hands. They were trembling. He remembered the violet light, the whisper, the feeling of being watched by something that knew his name before he spoke it.
So we're free? Milo asked, hope creeping into his voice.
If we get to the ship, we just leave. Hana shook her head slowly.
No.
That's the twist. The moment you cross the threshold of the extraction zone, your contract triggers a forfeiture clause. Your debt is transferred to your next of kin. In this case, she looked at Rowan, your sister. Rowan's blood ran cold. He grabbed Hana by the collar, pulling her close. You said you didn't know how you got the data. You're lying. I know, Hana said, her voice steady despite his grip on her shirt. I was part of the design team before I realized what they were building. I ran because I saw the first containment breach. It wasn't a monster. It was us. The things inside aren't trying to get out anymore. They're trying to come with us. A sudden jolt shook the cage. The lights flickered, dying for a second before buzzing back on in a harsh stroboscopic red.
We're stopping.
Listening to the grinding gears above them.
Manual override failed.
Cut the cables, Rowan yelled, pulling out his multi-tool. He jammed it into the control panel and twisted, sparks flying. The cage shuddered, but remained suspended halfway up the shaft. Below them, the violet light was rising. It didn't rush. It climbed like a tide, filling the acid floor, eating through the grating, pooling against the walls of the shaft. Where it touched the metal, the corrosion spread rapidly, turning thick steel into dust in seconds.
It's gaining speed. It knows we know.
How do we stop it? Milo asked, his voice rising in panic. He clutched his injured leg, his knuckles white. Rowan looked at the reactor core schematic on Hana's pad. Then he looked up, toward the top of the shaft, where the secondary access deck lay. We don't stop it. We outrun it. There's no time, Vera said. The lift is dead. The other elevators are too far down. Not if we drop, Rowan said. He pointed to a maintenance hatch on the side of the cage, labeled Emergency Descent. We jump into the descent chute. It dumps us directly into the coolant reservoir. From there, it's a straight shot to the airlock. That's suicide, Milo protested. The coolant is cryogenic. It's also frozen solid, Rowan countered. If the violet light touches supercooled fluid, it slows down. That's what Hana said about the containment units. They freeze at absolute zero. Hana nodded quickly. Yes, the thermal shock disrupts its cohesion. It becomes inert ice for several minutes. Enough time to reach the ship.
And if we miss? Vera asked, her eyes narrowing.
Then we become part of the experiment,
Rowan said. He looked at each of them in turn. Milo's fear, Hana's resolve, Vera's determination.
We don't have a choice. The company won't let us leave otherwise, and neither will it. He kicked the release lever for the emergency hatch. It groaned, rusted but functional. The door swung open, revealing a dark, vertical tunnel lined with slick metal rungs. Cold air rushed up from below, carrying the smell of liquid nitrogen and stale ice.
Go.
It was filling the shaft now, the top half of the cage illuminated by its eerie glow. The metal groaned under the pressure. Vera went first, leaping into the chute without hesitation. Her boots found the rungs instantly. Milo followed, stumbling but catching himself on the side rail. Hannah paused for a second, looking back at the violet light as it licked up the walls of the cage, dissolving the floor beneath her feet. "Go!" Rowan shouted again. Hannah turned and jumped. Rowan was last. He held his breath, gripping the edge of the hatch, and dropped. The cold hit him like a physical blow, stealing the air from his lungs. He slid down the rungs, the metal biting into his gloves. Below him, Vera and Hannah were already moving toward the far end of the coolant reservoir, their flashlights cutting through the swirling mist. Milo was right behind them, limping but moving. Rowan kicked off the wall, aiming for the gap between the cage and the shaft wall. He hit the rungs harder than intended, his shoulder wrenching painfully, but he kept going. The violet light surged behind him, filling the space where the cage had been. It rushed toward him, a wave of whispering shadows and distorted voices. "Rowan, come home." He squeezed his eyes shut for a fraction of a second, then opened them again, focusing on the dark tunnel ahead. He slid faster, the wind roaring in his ears. The cold was intense, numbing his fingers, but he didn't stop. He couldn't look back. If he looked back, he might hesitate. And hesitation was death. He reached the bottom of the chute and skidded across the icy floor, coming to a halt near Vera. She pulled him up by the arm, her grip strong and unyielding.
Move.
They ran through the coolant reservoir, the ground slick with ice and condensation. The violet light poured out of the shaft above, spreading across the ceiling like a spiderweb, but it stalled at the edge of the frozen floor. It churned and boiled, unable to penetrate the supercooled air for more than a few inches. It was buying them time, seconds, maybe minutes. "The airlock is 200 meters north," Hannah said, checking her pad again. "The automated doors are manual override only. I need my code."
Do it now.
He looked back at the violet tide. It was starting to freeze over, cracks forming in its surface like shattered glass. But as it froze, it didn't stop moving. It crawled along the walls, seeking new pathways, new targets.
I'm trying.
Hannah tapped furiously on her pad. "The system is rejecting my clearance levels. The ledger has locked me out. Override it manually," Vera said, pulling a small device from her belt, a universal jammer. She plugged it into the port on Hannah's pad.
Bypass the security layer. It'll take 10 seconds.
10 seconds we might not have," Milo yelled, pointing ahead. The airlock doors were visible in the distance, massive slabs of reinforced steel, but between them and the doors lay a long, open corridor. No cover, no shadows, just 40 meters of exposed walkway.
Go.
They sprinted. The cold bit into their skin, but adrenaline masked the pain. They hit the open corridor, running across the ice. Behind them, the violet light broke through the frozen crust above, pouring down like rain. It didn't touch the floor, but it filled the air, a dense fog of whispering voices and cold dread. Rowan felt it brush against his face. He heard his sister's voice clearly now. "Papa, help me!" He shook his head violently, pushing the memory away. "Don't listen!" he yelled over the roar of the light. "It's not real!" Vera was in front, her shoulder hitting the control panel for the airlock door. Hannah plugged in the jammer. The lights on the panel turned red, then yellow, then green. "Access granted," Hannah panted. Door opening. The massive steel doors groaned, sliding apart. Beyond them lay the extraction ship, the rusty nail, its engines idling with a low, steady hum. The ramp was down. Someone was waiting at the top. A figure in a white uniform stood silhouetted against the ship's interior lights. No insignia. No face visible behind the visor. Rowan skidded to a halt at the threshold, his boots scraping on the ice. He raised his rifle, aiming at the figure.
"Who are you?" he demanded. The figure tilted its head. The voice that came out was synthesized, calm, and utterly devoid of empathy.
Recovery Team Sigma. You have failed to meet the secondary containment criteria. Please remain still for evaluation. Behind them, the violet light crested the final ridge of the coolant reservoir. It surged forward, a tidal wave of darkness and sound, swallowing the world in silence. Rowan didn't lower his rifle. The figure stood perfectly still, its white uniform immaculate against the grime of the station. It didn't raise a weapon. It didn't need to. The shadow behind Rowan was inches from consuming them, a living void that ate light and hope in equal measure.
Evaluated by whom? Vera asked, stepping forward. Her rifle barrel wavered for a heartbeat before she steadied it on the figure's chest plate.
By the people who killed this station. By the ones who sent us to die. The figure tilted its head again. A smooth mechanical motion. Salvage Solutions Unlimited values efficiency. Employee hail. The experiment is concluded. You are contaminated. Protocol dictates immediate containment. I'm not staying here,
Rowan said.
His voice was steady, though his heart hammered against his ribs like a trapped bird. We're leaving. Now. Negative, the figure replied. Containment breach in Sector 4 requires all personnel to remain until neutralization is complete. Behind them, the violet light hit the threshold of the airlock. It didn't splash. It flowed over the floor like mercury, instantly freezing where it touched the metal frame of the doorway. But it didn't stop. It piled up, climbing the walls of the ship's ramp, seeking heat, seeking life. It's coming, Milo whimpered. He backed away from the group, his limp forgotten as adrenaline took over. It's going to get in. Get on the ramp, Hannah said. Her voice was sharp, cutting through the rising hum of the approaching entity. She looked at Rowan, her eyes wide but focused.
The ship can jump if we're clear.
The pilot might be dead, but the auto-thrust is still active. If we get inside, I can override the lockout. Who's piloting it? Vera asked, glancing back at the shadow climbing the ramp. There was no one waiting on the tarmac before. Hannah didn't answer. She pulled a small keycard from her pocket and swiped it through the figure's chest port. Sparks flew. The figure jerked backward, its systems failing as she injected a virus directly into its communication. Array. Go. She screamed. Now, the figure collapsed, twitching on the floor. Its visor cracked, revealing nothing underneath but empty darkness. It wasn't wearing a face. It was wearing a shell. Rowan grabbed Milo by the harness and hauled him up the ramp. His boots slipped on the ice that now coated the entire corridor. He kicked it away, finding purchase on the warm metal of the ship's hull. Vera cleared the top first, her rifle scanning the interior of the cockpit for threats. Hannah followed, sliding down the last few rungs and rolling onto the deck. Rowan was close behind. He scrambled up the ladder, his lungs burning. The violet light was at the base of the ramp now, climbing it with terrifying speed. It reached for his boots. He could feel the cold radiating from it, a chill that penetrated his suit, his skin, his bones. It whispered his name. Rowan, stay. He threw himself into the cockpit and slammed the emergency exit lever. The ramp retracted above him, sealing out the shadow just as it touched the threshold. A hiss of pressurization filled the cabin. The airlock cycled. The violet light hit the outer hull, spreading across the metal like frost on a window.
Jump! Rowan yelled at the cockpit.
Get us out of here. The engines roared to life. The ship lurched forward, thrusters firing in quick succession. G-force crushed Rowan into his seat as the rusty nail broke away from the station's docking clamps. Through the viewport, he saw the violet light pouring out of the airlock they had just sealed, flooding the corridor behind them. It flowed like a river, rushing toward the bridge of the ship.
It's chasing us.
Milo sobbed, clutching his injured leg.
It's going to get in.
No, it isn't, Vera said, her eyes fixed on the rear cameras. Look. On the screen, the violet tide hit the hull of the station and stopped. It didn't follow them into space. It pooled around the docking bay, consuming the metal, but it couldn't cross the vacuum. Or perhaps it was waiting, watching.
Why did it stop? Rowan asked.
Because there's no life out here.
Hana said quietly.
She was typing furiously at a console in the corner of the cockpit, her fingers flying across the keys. It feeds on biological fear, on the connection between people. Out here, in the void, it starves. Rowan let out a breath he didn't realize he'd been holding. His hands shook as he unclipped his harness. He looked at Vera. She nodded, lowering her rifle. Milo slumped against the wall, weeping silently.
We made it.
But the words felt hollow. The victory was thin, stretched too tight over a terrifying reality. No, Hana said. She turned to face them, her screen glowing blue in the dim cockpit. We didn't make it. We just started the next phase. What do you mean? Vera asked. Hana tapped a key on her console. A video file opened. It was grainy, shaky footage from Hana's own helmet cam during their escape. But as Rowan watched, he saw what had happened when they jumped into the coolant chute. He saw the violet light touching his suit. He saw it cling to his boot for a second longer than necessary. It followed us, Hana said. Her voice was devoid of emotion, clinical and detached. Not on the ship. On you. It's in your suit, in your breath, in your blood. Rowan looked down at his chest. The seal on his exosuit was intact. But beneath the layers of fabric and composite, he felt a coldness that hadn't been there before. A chill that settled deep in his marrow.
Can you remove it? Rowan asked.
No.
Hana said.
It's microscopic now, integrated with your cellular structure. If we try to scrub it, we kill you. Vera stood up, walking to the rear of the cockpit. She looked at Rowan with a mixture of pity and horror. So what are we? Experiments? Test subjects, Hana corrected. Salvage Solutions Unlimited isn't just collecting scrap. They're harvesting something. And you four, you're the delivery system. The ship shook violently. Alarms blared. Red lights flashed across the cockpit ceiling.
Proximity alert?
Vera shouted, running back to her station.
Something's on the nav computer. It's not a station. It's moving toward us. Rowan looked at the main screen. Space was dark, empty. But then, in the distance, stars began to disappear. Not because they were gone, because something was passing in front of them.
It's coming for us.
It knows we have it. Hana pulled up a new file on her console. It was a contract. Rowan's contract. The fine print at the bottom, which he had skimmed over in his desperation to sign, glowed in bold red letters. Clause 14. In the event of biocontamination during salvage operations, the employee agrees to remain in custody of Salvage Solutions Unlimited for permanent containment and study. Rowan stared at the words. The ship spun slowly as the entity approached. He could feel it now inside his head. Not just his sister's voice. Thousands of voices. Whispers, screams, all trapped in the dark with him.
We're not going home.
His voice was calm. Resigned. Are we? No.
Hana said.
She closed her laptop. We're going deeper into the experiment. The ship shuddered again, harder this time. The lights flickered and died, leaving only the emergency red glow. In the darkness, Rowan heard a new sound, not from outside, from inside his own suit. A soft, wet clicking, like something growing. Sit down, Vera said. Her voice was tight, controlled.
We need to stabilize the ship.
I can't, Milo cried. He pointed to his leg. The fabric of his suit was torn. Beneath it, the skin was gray. Veins of violet light pulsed under his flesh, spreading up his arm like a map of veins made of starlight and poison. Rowan looked at Vera. At Hana. They were terrified. But they were still fighting, still trying to understand. Keep flying, Rowan said. He grabbed the controls. The ship responded sluggishly, but it flew. We're not done yet. Not while there's still breath in our lungs. The darkness outside closed in. The violet light was here, and it was hungry. Rowan Hale gripped the throttle, his knuckles white. The ship screamed as it plunged into the void, chasing a horizon that didn't exist. Behind them, the station dissolved, consumed by the thing they had brought home. Ahead, only the dark waited, and within the dark, something vast turned its attention toward them. It wasn't just following them anymore. It was in them. Rowan felt the presence in his mind expand. It wasn't just his sister's voice now. It was voices he didn't know. Voices of men and women who had come before him, who had failed their quota, who had been left behind. "Welcome to the family," the voices whispered in unison. "You belong to us now." Rowan squeezed his eyes shut. He pushed back against the intrusion, digging deep into his own will. He thought of his sister, of her smile, of the life he was supposed to have. That memory was a shield, a thin, fragile shield, but it held.
We're not yours.
His voice shook, but it was clear. "We're not yours." The ship lurched again. The violet light in Milo's veins flared bright, illuminating the cockpit in a sickly glow. He screamed, clutching his head. "It hurts." Vera jumped up, grabbing a medkit from the wall.
I've got him!
"Rowan, hold steady." Rowan didn't let go of the controls. He couldn't. If he let go, they would crash. If they crashed, the thing would win. "Hana," he said, "can you track it? This entity. Can we find where it's going?" Hana shook her head. "It's not a place. It's a state of being. It's spreading. Every ship that leaves these stations carries it. We're just one drop in a larger ocean." "Then we drown the ocean," Rowan said. He set a new course, pointing the ship toward the nearest jump gate. "We take this to the ledger. We burn it all down." "That's suicide," Vera said, injecting Milo with a sedative. He slumped unconscious, but the violet veins continued to pulse beneath his skin.
Maybe.
He looked at Hana.
You know the protocols.
"You know how to hurt them." Hana met his gaze. For the first time, she smiled. It wasn't a happy smile. It was a dangerous one. "I know exactly where to plug the knife in," she said. The ship jumped. Space warped around them, stretching into infinite lines of light. For a moment, Rowan felt free. Then the voices returned, louder this time, angrier. They knew what he was planning, and they were waiting. Rowan Hale gripped the controls tighter. The darkness ahead wasn't empty. It was watching, waiting to see if he would break. He wouldn't. Not yet. The ship sailed into the unknown, carrying its cargo of ghosts and monsters toward a war that hadn't started yet, but was already over. The jump gates swallowed the ship whole, folding space around them like a dying star collapsing in on itself. Rowan felt his stomach lurch, a sensation of being pulled through a straw made of gravity and static. The violet veins in Milo's arm pulsed in time with the thrum of the drive, a sickening rhythm that matched the headache splitting Rowan's skull. When the stars reappeared, they were wrong. Too sharp, too blue. They weren't the familiar constellations of human space. They were alien, distant, and cold.
Where are we?
She hadn't moved from Milo's side, her rifle still loaded, her eyes darting between the unconscious mechanic and the console screens. Rowan checked the nav computer. The data scrolled too fast to read, but one number stood out. Distance to nearest corporate hub, 40,000 light-years. "Not where we thought," Hana said. Her face was pale, illuminated by the ghostly green of her terminal. The jump, it didn't go to the ledger headquarters. It went to a node. A relay station on the edge of the known sector. "Good," Rowan said. He released the throttle, letting the ship drift in the silence of the void. "We're off the grid, off their radar. For now," Hana corrected. She tapped her screen again. "I've scrubbed our transponder code. For the next 6 hours, we are ghosts. No one will know we exist." 6 hours, Milo groaned. He had awakened during the jump, his eyes wide and glassy. The violet lines on his skin had faded to a dull gray, but the veins remained, mapping a path of infection across his forearm.
That's all we have? Before they find us?
"Before they realize you're carriers,"
Hana said. She didn't look up.
Salvage Solutions Unlimited doesn't just send ships. They send trackers. And now, there are 4 new signals broadcasting the same frequency as your biosignature. Rowan looked at his own arm. The coldness he had felt earlier was gone, replaced by a warm, creeping numbness that started in his chest and spread outward. He pulled down the collar of his tunic. The skin beneath was smooth, unblemished, but deep inside, behind his ribs, something shifted. A weight, a presence.
It's settling.
His voice sounded distant to his own ears, as if he were hearing it through water. Vera leaned back against the bulkhead, her breathing ragged.
So what's the play? We can't go home. We can't stay here. And we certainly can't land at any corporate station.
We don't land.
Hana said.
She finally turned to face them. Her eyes were dark, hollowed out by something she wouldn't share. We dock. Dock? Vera raised an eyebrow. At what? The nearest rock? The Acheron, Hana said. It's a derelict transport ship abandoned 20 years ago in this sector. It has no crew manifest, no corporate ID, and more importantly, it has a working long-range transmitter. And why do we need that? Rowan asked. Because I'm not going to let them turn us into specimens, Hana said.
I'm going to broadcast the truth. Every file I've stolen from my own terminal, the containment protocols, the test results, the names of the previous crews.
You'll get us killed.
Vera said.
I'll get us noticed.
Hana corrected.
Corporations hate bad press. They'll pull us in, not to study us, but to silence us. Which means we stay alive until we reach the main office. Rowan looked at the screen. The coordinates for the Acheron were marked in red. A ghost ship in a dead sector. Perfectly safe, perfectly lonely.
It's a trap.
He rubbed his face, smearing dirt across his cheek.
Everything is a trap.
Maybe.
Rowan said. He looked at Hana, then at Vera, then at the ceiling of the cockpit, where the emergency lights cast long, jagged shadows.
But it's the only move left on the board. Hana nodded.
I have the encryption keys to override the Acheron's locks.
But we need to get there fast. The trackers won't take long to triangulate our position once we stop jumping. Rowan pushed off the console, walking to the rear of the cockpit. He looked at Vera, who was still holding Milo's hand. She met his gaze, nodding slowly. A silent agreement passed between them. They were past fear now. Past panic. There was only the mission. Survival. Retaliation. Set course, Rowan said. Maximum burn. The ship hummed as the engines engaged, shaking off the debris of the jump. Outside, the stars blurred into streaks of white fire. Rowan watched them pass, feeling the weight in his chest grow heavier with every second. The voices were quieter now, waiting, patient. They knew he was running out of time, but so did the company. Hana began typing again, her fingers a blur.
I'm uploading the package to the buffer. It'll transmit as soon we make contact with the Acheron's network.
And if it's empty? Vera asked.
If there's no ship there?
Then we fly into the dark.
Hana said. She didn't stop typing.
With 4 carriers and a dead man's switch in our pockets. They'll have to deal with us. Rowan watched the nav computer. The distance to the Acheron was closing. 10,000 kilometers. 5,000. 2,000. Suddenly, the ship lurched, not from the engines. From outside.
Contact, Vera shouted.
Multiple ships, emerging from subspace. Rowan spun around. On the main screen, 3 black vessels appeared. Sleek, no insignia, no lights, just predators in the dark.
They're here.
Her voice was calm.
Already.
Shields up, Vera yelled, diving for her station. The first shot hit the hull. The ship shuddered violently, throwing Rowan against the console. Sparks rained down from the ceiling.
Hold them off, Rowan shouted. He grabbed the controls, wrestling with the ship as it spun wildly.
Hana, get that transmission ready. Now.
I'm trying.
Hana's fingers flew across her keyboard. Their firewall it's adaptive. It's learning my patterns. Keep going, Milo screamed from the floor. He was sitting up now, his face contorted in pain. The gray veins were spreading again, turning violet at the edges. It's waking up. It knows they're here. Rowan looked at the screen. The black ships were closing in, their weapons charging with a low, menacing hum. They weren't trying to board. They were trying to erase.
Vera, target their engines. Milo, Keep the shields stable. Hana, you have 30 seconds.
I need more, Hana yelled,
You don't have more.
firing a burst of plasma into the void. One of the black ships flinched, its shield flickering. Do it or we die. Rowan pushed the throttle to the max. The ship surged forward, closing the distance to the Acheron. He could see it now, a hulking mass of rusted metal and broken antennas, drifting in the silence. 10 seconds, Hana shouted. The second black ship fired. The beam grazed the side of their hull, sending them spinning. Alarms wailed. Oxygen levels dropped. 5 seconds. Rowan grabbed the emergency airlock release. Brace for impact. Hana! Vera screamed. It's done! Hana slammed her hand on the enter key. On the screen, a burst of data shot from their ship, bypassing the black vessels and slamming into the Acheron's receiver. The transmission went out. Wide. Unstoppable. Everywhere. The black ships hesitated. Just for a second. Confused by the sudden change in protocol. That was all Rowan needed. He dove the ship toward the Acheron's docking bay, aiming for the open hangar doors. The ground rushed up to meet them. Metal screamed against metal as the hull scraped along the deck. Sparks flew. Smoke filled the cockpit. Then, silence. The engines died. The lights went out. Emergency red bathed the room in blood. Rowan panted, his chest heaving. He looked around. Vera was still at her station, alive. Milo was curled on the floor, breathing raggedly. Hana was staring at her screen, tears streaming down her face.
It's done.
They know. Rowan unclipped his harness. He felt the weight in his chest shift again. The presence inside him stirred, waking to the taste of fear on the wind. Welcome to the family, a voice whispered in his head. This time, it wasn't his sister's voice. It was Hana's. He looked at her. She wasn't crying. She was smiling. A cold, empty smile. Rowan froze. He looked at Vera, at Milo. They were still human, still scared. But Hana had changed. Her eyes were violet, just for a second. Then they snapped back to brown. Are you okay? Rowan asked. His voice was steady, but his heart hammered against his ribs.
I'm fine.
She stood up, walking to the airlock. We need to move. The transmission will draw attention. The air in the hangar bay tasted of ozone and old rust. It was a dry, metallic tang that coated the back of Rowan's throat, reminding him that he was breathing recycled atmosphere for the last time. Or perhaps the next hour. The emergency lights pulsed in a slow, rhythmic red cycle, casting long, distorted shadows that stretched across the floor like grasping fingers. Hana walked ahead of them, her boots clicking sharply against the composite plating. She didn't look back. Her posture was rigid, spine straight as a rod, hands clasped behind her back. The smile had vanished from her face, replaced by an expression of hollow focus. It wasn't relief. It wasn't fear. It was the blank stare of someone who had just calculated the exact distance between life and death, and found it acceptable. Rowan clipped his harness to the wall, his fingers trembling slightly as he unbuckled the final strap. The adrenaline was draining away, leaving a cold, heavy nausea in its stomach. He looked at Vera. She was checking the charge on her plasma rifle, her knuckles white around the grip. Her eyes darted toward the dark corners of the hangar, the places where the emergency lights failed to penetrate. Milo groaned from the floor. He pushed himself up onto his elbows, his face pale and slick with sweat. The violet tint had faded from the veins beneath his skin, but a throbbing headache seemed to radiate from his temples. He spat on the deck, a dark globule of blood mixed with saliva.
If that thing inside my head was watching,
Milo croaked, wiping his mouth with the back of his hand.
I hope it enjoyed the show, because I certainly didn't.
Keep moving.
Her voice was flat, devoid of inflection. She stopped at the main bulkhead door and tapped a sequence into the keypad. The locks disengaged with a series of heavy clunks that vibrated through the floor.
We have maybe 4 minutes before their retrieval team breaches the Acheron's outer hull. They don't like loose ends.
Rowan stepped past her, forcing his legs to move. He led the way into the corridor beyond. The walls here were different from the ship they had just crash-landed into. These were older, pitted with micrometeoroid scars and stained with decades of neglected grime. Pipes ran along the ceiling, leaking a slow, rhythmic drip of coolant that hissed as it hit the floor. The silence was the worst part. It wasn't the empty silence of a dead station, it was a held breath. The kind of quiet that feels like pressure against the eardrums. Rowan could feel the eyes on him. Not visible ones, not physical ones, but the weight of something else watching from the dark. "They know you're here," a voice whispered in the base of his skull. It sounded like Milo's laugh, distorted and slowed down. "They always know." Rowan clenched his jaw, ignoring it. He couldn't afford to listen. Listening was how they got in. Vera took point, her scanner sweeping the corridor in wide arcs. The blue light of the device cut through the gloom, revealing piles of debris, shattered crates, twisted metal beams, and things that looked like organic matter fused with machinery. She stopped at a junction, raising a fist. "Clear," she said softly. "But there's energy readings, low level, faint, like a heartbeat."
Old power cells.
She was already moving down the left corridor.
Or residual data ghosts. Ignore them.
Easy for you to say.
Stumbling after her, he pulled himself along the wall, using it for support.
You haven't got the squirming in your veins yet.
Rowan fell into step beside Milo, keeping a hand on the pilot's shoulder to steady him. The contact sent a jolt through both of them. Milo flinched, then leaned into it slightly, grateful for the anchor.
What are those things?
Nodding toward a cluster of shadows in the corner. They looked like human limbs, elongated and jointed wrong, sticking out from a mass of tangled cables. "Are they hollow men?" "No," Hana said. She didn't stop walking. "Hollow men mimic voice. These are something else, something older. The Acheron predates the standard containment protocols. Whatever this place is, it's not just a ship, it's a cage." Rowan frowned. A cage for what, and who was inside it with them? They reached a heavy blast door, marked with faded yellow hazard stripes. The text above it read, "Sector 4 Engineering, authorized personnel only." The padlock was broken, the metal sheared clean off. "Hannah?" Rowan asked. "I didn't break it," she said. She placed her hand on the door sensor. Nothing happened. "It's already open." She pushed it. It swung inward with a screech of rusted hinges. The room beyond was vast, dominated by a central column of dark machinery that stretched up into the darkness above. Cables hung from the ceiling like vines in a jungle, swaying slightly in a breeze that shouldn't exist. "Stay close," Vera said. She raised her rifle, aiming at the shadows. "Don't touch anything." They entered the room. The air was colder here. Rowan could see his breath pluming in front of him. His heart rate slowed, not from calm, but from the creeping dread that settled in his chest. It felt like walking into a predator's den while it was still sleeping. Milo stopped at the threshold, staring at the cables. "Why are they moving?" "There's no air current down here. Convection," Hana said. She walked to a console on the far wall and began typing. "Heat differentials." Or residual activity. "What does that mean?" Rowan asked. "It means this ship is still alive," she said. Her fingers flew across the keys, the sound sharp in the quiet room.
Or it's pretending to be.
Rowan watched her back. She was typing faster now, her movements precise and frantic. On the screen, lines of code scrolled by so fast they were a blur. Then, a map appeared. Red dots pulsed on the display, moving slowly toward them. "Hana," Vera said, her voice tight. "What's happening?" "I'm tracing the source of the signal," Hana said. She didn't look up.
The transmission I sent, it triggered something. Not the company. Something else. It's waking up. Who?
Rowan asked. He stepped closer to her, looking at the screen. The red dots were converging on their position. Dozens of them. Maybe hundreds. Hana finally looked up. Her eyes were no longer brown. They were black. Completely, utterly black. No whites, no irises, just voids. Not who, she said. But her voice didn't move her lips. The sound came from everywhere at once, echoing in Rowan's head, in Vera's ears, in Milo's bones. What? Vera stumbled back, raising her rifle. Hannah? The thing that looked like Hannah smiled. It was the same cold, empty smile from before. But now it stretched too wide, showing too many teeth. Rows of them, sharp and translucent. It's already here, the voice whispered, and it's hungry. The lights in the room died. Pitch blackness swallowed them. Rowan could hear his own breath ragged in his throat. He reached out, grabbing Vera's arm. His hand came away wet with blood. She had been cut. Milo, he whispered. Here, Milo's voice came from the floor. I'm blind. I can't see anything. Hold still, Rowan said. He pulled his utility knife from his belt, flipping it open. The blade caught the faint glow of Vera's scanner, which had dropped to the ground. He picked it up, scanning for movement. The scanner showed nothing. No heat signatures, no energy readings, just empty space. But the air felt thick, charged, like the moment before lightning strikes. Then he heard it. A sound like wet leather stretching, coming from above. Rowan looked up. In the darkness, 2 points of violet light ignited. Then 2 more. Then 10. Dozens. Hundreds. Glowing eyes opening in the dark, watching him. Don't move, the voice in his head said. It was Hannah's voice again, but distorted, layered with 1,000 other voices. If you move, we see you. If you breathe, we taste you. Rowan froze. His lungs burned for air, but he held them tight. He watched the violet eyes drift closer. They weren't on cables anymore. They were on the walls, on the ceiling, on the floor, everywhere. Vera squeezed his arm, her grip hard enough to bruise. She was terrified. Rowan could feel it in her tremor, but she didn't scream. She knew better. Milo stopped breathing. The eyes kept coming, closing the distance. 10 feet, 5 feet, 2 feet. Then a hand grabbed Rowan's shoulder. He spun around, knife raised. Hannah stood there. Her eyes were brown again, normal, human. She looked terrified, shaking. Run, she gasped. Now. Rowan didn't ask questions. He turned and ran. Vera was already ahead of him, firing blindly into the dark. The plasma bolts lit up the room in strobing flashes, revealing glimpses of the things closing in. Tall, thin, made of glass and shadow. They moved like water, flowing over the walls, defying gravity. Glass giants, but not frozen, not anymore. They shattered the light. Rowan felt a gust of wind hit his back. He dove forward as a crystalline arm swept through the space where he had been standing. The impact shattered the floor beneath him, sending shards of metal and concrete flying. He scrambled to his feet, dragging Vera with him.
This way,
Pointing to a maintenance hatch on the far wall. They ran. Behind them, the screech of glass on metal filled the air. It was a sound like fingernails on a chalkboard, amplified 1,000 times. Milo lagged behind, coughing, his leg dragged by Vera. Rowan didn't look back. He couldn't. If he looked back, he might see what was chasing them, and if he saw it, it would know he was afraid. And fear made them solid. They reached the hatch. Rowan kicked the release lever. It jammed.
Open it.
Rowan slammed his shoulder against the metal. Once. Twice. On the 3rd hit, it gave way. They tumbled through into a narrow maintenance shaft. Rowan slammed the door shut behind them and engaged the manual lock. Heavy boots pounded on the other side. The metal groaned under the impact.
Hold it!
Throwing his weight against the door from the inside, Rowan pulled out his knife and jammed it into the gear mechanism.
we have to go up.
He pointed to a ladder leading straight up into the darkness.
The signal is coming from the bridge. If we can boost it, we might be able to call for help. Real help. Not them.
Hannah looked at him. Her face was pale, her eyes wide with something that wasn't quite human anymore.
There is no one else. Only us, and what's coming.
She turned and started climbing the ladder. Rowan looked at Vera, at Milo. They nodded. They climbed, into the dark, away from the giants, toward whatever waited above. The ladder ran through the ship's spine. Rust flaked off rungs, coating Rowan's gloves in gray dust. Each step upward felt heavier than the last, as if gravity had tightened its grip on the Acheron's upper decks. Below them, a crash echoed up the shaft. Metal buckled. The giants were forcing their way in. Rowan reached the bridge hatch and pushed. It gave way with a groan of stressed metal. He spilled into the room, pulling Vera and Milo after him. Hannah was already at the main console, her fingers flying across the keys. The screens around them flickered to life, displaying streams of binary code that scrolled too fast to read.
The signal is weak.
Her voice was steady, but her hands shook.
The Acheron's transmitter is damaged. I need more power.
From where?
He glanced at the rear viewport. The 3 black ships were closing in, their weapons charging with a low hum that vibrated in his teeth. Hannah pointed to the floor.
The reactor core is 3 kilometers below us.
If we route the auxiliary power from the containment fields, we can boost the signal tenfold. But it'll drop the shields on this sector. Do it, Vera said. She raised her rifle, aiming at the door. I can hold them for 30 seconds. Rowan hesitated. What happens to the containment? It fails, Hannah said. Whatever is trapped down there, it will be free.